Okay, we have another Trino contributor call today. It's the 24th of October, and a group of us is ready to chat about all sorts of topics. We'll make this recording available and meeting notes as well for those of you who missed out, and we hope to see you next time live joining us. So we have a whole bunch of topics today to talk about, so I'm just gonna go and start through it, and then we'll take topics from the people that are live with us. First one is Trino Summit is happening in December 11th and 12th, 2 days. We are hoping to have lots of technical sessions, all related to Trino. The call for speakers ends this week on the weekend. So we're hoping to see some more contributions from you. We have a pretty interesting lineup already. There's a blog post on the website with some first glimpses at what they are. So we have these sessions from Netflix, Prezi, Bazaar, and Branch already, and FanDuel. So those are already in the pipeline. But we have 2 days, and the sessions are only 15 minutes or 30 minutes. So if you just have a small topic, you can probably cover that pretty easily in 15 minutes. So it wouldn't be too much effort. It's a virtual event, so you don't need to travel or anything like that either. So, and if necessary, we can even pre-record it because of like time zones or so if you're off internationally and it doesn't work out for you. So would be great to get some more contributions, proposals from you as speakers. So that's our first
I'm still
wish.
thinking about this, so I will let you know.
Cool. And yeah, Doug, Robert, everything, right? Like everything is open. The next topic is we introduced some changes on the, not changes, but clarifications on the contribution process. So please, if you are a contributor and run into issues or questions, do go back and consult this page about the contribution process, specifically also around pull request and commit guidelines. We expanded a bit on commit message guidelines and like, sorting and breaking commits apart and that kind of stuff. So hopefully this is clearer. If you see others in your reviews that struggle with this, also refer them back to it. And if you feel anything is wrong in these docs, also let me know so we can improve them even further. Hopefully this will help. And we're also working on even more clarifications on that. We will let you know more once we got those live. And it was funny, by the way, these like 7 commit rules. Recently, there was a noise in the Linux community where Linus Torvalds also insisted on commit messages following this. And yeah, so we are on the same page with the Linux kernel developers there. So that's good to see. Next topic, we still are trying to get to our issues cleanup and improve that. As you see here, our pull requests are now down to 230, so that's pretty good. There's still some old ones we want to clean up, but this is kind of like probably where we're gonna like. I'm guessing we're gonna be settling around 100 over time. But our issues at 2,500, close to. If anyone has filed issues in the past that are no longer valid, please close them. We will also start automating cleanup and that kind of stuff. But any help on things that you do yourself or have done yourself would also be appreciated, because ultimately it'll reduce the load for other maintainers to look through it. Even if it's just flagging things as like a roadmap issue or performance or docs or whatever, that already helps as well. And of course, if they're old, then just close them. Next one. There is discussion around removing the Accumulo connector. Nobody seems to be using it. We asked in the community multiple places here. We looked at various customers from companies, and we also asked in the Apache Accumulo community themselves. At this stage, we are thinking we will remove that connector. If there's any objections, we ask you to please chime in here and let us know. At this stage, however, we are probably planning to remove it. Seems like Accumulo is kind of like not used much at all or at all anymore.
So
The initial users of this. are no longer using it.
Do we have other candidates for such removals like the Kinesis
I haven't looked any
connector?
further. I have not. I'm sure other people have other thoughts about removal of various ones. We also have a lot of connectors that want to come in. So we discussed this earlier. It's going to be tricky, but
Yeah, I'm asking specifically for the Kinesis because it's still based on the AWS SDK v1. And this is going out of support. So we either need to rewrite it to v2 or just drop it.
So when you say going out of support, does it mean it stops working or?
No, it will work, but there won't be any changes and fixes and so on to the SDK. I think that's, let me check. When is the date?
Kinesis, that's like, I'm completely wrong now, but that's an Amazon product, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we should talk to them as well. We can take that on if there's a wish around that for sure.
It's already in maintenance mode, and the end of life is December next year.
Okay.
Yeah. So regardless, the question there is not whether the SDK is going out of support, is are people using the connector? Because users not know or care about whether the underlying gets support or not.
Yeah, and are there potential contributors that are willing to upgrade it to the new SDK and whatever? Good call. Did not realize that one. Cool. So that's Accumulo connector. Another thing that came up in our discussions is the JDBC driver. So as you all know, I guess I'm gonna jump to this topic first. So Trino, with the release of 464 will require Java 23. We are always going with the latest and greatest available release because we want to take advantage of all the features. We've already taken great advantage in terms of performance of features from Java 22 and stuff like that. So this will continue. But with this also came up the question of what are we doing on the client side? And the client side, in terms of our client side requirements are on the one hand the JDBC driver and on the other hand the CLI. And currently we
are on 8.
All the way to 8, which is long dead and gone, we hope, but seemingly maybe not or so. But essentially our question is to the community, what about making the minimum requirement Java 11? That's a Java LTS release from a long time ago. Since then, Java 17 became an LTS and Java 21 became an LTS, and now we're on 23. The stats around usage vary, but we looked at tools like dbeaver is on Java 17 and stuff like that. So we don't know. Ideally, we would like to get community input on that. If anyone has any like custom applications or whatever where they're using the JDBC driver and rely on some very old Java. This is our first call out. We'll probably file an issue and provide a place to provide input about that. But currently our plan is to maybe do that. The reason we would like to do that is because we could get rid of some very old HTTP libraries and problems that they cause. Right, Mateusz?
Yeah.
All right, I will file an issue around that, by the way, so we can gather feedback. The next one is I'm announcing or like letting you all know again. Sorry. That
Yeah, Manfred, I can't hear you. I think other people can't hear you either.
Oh,
yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you can hear me.
Oh, sorry, messed up. So again, sorry. I'll go back to, so what we have done is we have organized a meeting about getting a operator going for Trino. On the 30th of October, we already have a whole bunch of interested parties. There is 2 open source ones that we know of that exist. There's one from Stackable and one from Canonical. We also have a potential large corporation wanting to donate theirs. And we want to have a kickoff meeting to discuss sort of next steps. And like, things like, well, what language should it be written in and whatever else. So anyone interested in participating in that, please contact me so that I can add you to the invite. And then the last topic I have here is, we just wanted to let you all know that with the release of 463, which just got out yesterday, HTTP2 is now the default for internal communication. There should be no impact, but if there is a configuration to switch it back to HTTP1. And also the client tools, JDBC driver and CLI, will now be using HTTP2 if they can. So we will add that as well to the release notes. But that's kind of like the updates we have so far. And now we can jump to any other topics that people wanted to discuss. So feel free to jump in. I know Doug and Robert came here to discuss specific topics. Eric is also here. Any others? What do you want to talk about next?
Hi, I'm Doug. I've been recently looking into views and and I posted a bit on the Slack, but the TLDR is that the way. So I have an Iceberg catalog, and the way that the views are created right now, I'm using a Hive Metastore too. So the view is created on the Hive Metastore, and I would like to read the view from a Spark program. And the Spark doesn't know about the Hive, the Presto views in the Hive Metastore. So I know they about 6 months ago, the Iceberg view spec was released, and I'm just kind of curious what other people think about like supporting views created in Trino or some other engine, and then being able to use those views in a different engine, and just kind of what the Trino, what the thoughts of the community, and if that's something else that people are interested in.
So I mean, I haven't looked at the spec for Iceberg, but I remember when we talked about it like a long time ago, and when they were starting to talk about it, some of the issues we brought up are that well, first of all, like SQL is pretty complicated, so any specification that tries to do anything more than just simple, select from a table, filter, maybe compute a few things, is going to be not very portable. The second thing is how do they deal with functions? Because functions in Spark are not necessarily the same functions that exist in Trino, both from the presence of the function and the behavior of the functions. Like, for example, you may have a function that, I don't know, let's say parses a number, and in Trino it may throw an error in some cases. In Spark, it may return nulls, like just to throw something out there. So they need, I mean, in order to be able to interpret a view portably, you have to have the same exact semantics. So I don't know. I mean, again, I haven't looked at the specs, so I don't know if they say, well, only these functions with these specific semantics are supported, or they leave it up to chance. So so that would be an issue.
So I can chime in a bit about that. So as you know, views are just a SQL statement with a name, right? The Iceberg spec has added, it's a SQL spec with a name, and an engine identifier that says this view was created by so-and-so. And then what that then means in terms of what the individual engine does with that knowledge is up to the engine. So Spark could say, okay, we're going to read that view, even if it's a Trino related view, and do something with it. But currently it doesn't.
Okay, so there's no spec. The only thing it says is you can create a view and you can just tag.
It's required that that value is added, like the identifying engine. That's the spec.
Yeah,
right?
So then it's up to each engine to decide whether they support views from other languages or not.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So the approach to that, like I said, especially if it's a SQL statement, the semantics of that statement can be arbitrary and very complicated. So what we have done with, I mean, we had the same problem with Hive views historically, where you go and create a view in Hive, the view is created using Hive syntax, and because it's in the Hive meta store, it's interpreted to be a Hive view. So what we did with Trino is we added this basic support for reading views created by Hive by translating them into Trino semantics. And the way we do that is via Coral, which is a library from LinkedIn to do translation from different languages, Trino to Spark, to Hive, and vice versa. So, and that would be the approach we would take to translate views from one language to another, because otherwise there's no way to run them.
Is Coral actually still an active project?
Yeah, they use it at LinkedIn. Yeah.
There was an idea in discussions in the past to make this more automatic. Like in Trino currently, even on the Hive views, you have to like switch that on, like to use Coral. We could change that to default, have it on, and we could also implement to use that in views that are in the Iceberg, Delta Lake, and Hoodie connector, but that's not something that has been done yet at all.
It should be the default. The only reason we didn't do it by default is that back in the day, we said we're gonna support Hive views, like optimistically, like if we can run it, we'll run it. And then so if the Hive view happened to use syntax that was compatible with Trino syntax, without any extraneous characters, without I mean, all the functions were known to Trino, we will run it. Like there's no guarantee about correctness of the execution, but we will run it. So for very simple views, that just worked, because if you did a select star from table or select column from table, there's no like that works in pretty much every database without changes. So then when we added the translation to support more complicated views, there were some early on, there were some limitations in Coral that broke some of those simpler queries. So we said, well, we don't want to turn it on by default and break everyone else. But that's been a while. It's been like a few years since we did that. So I think we should turn it on by default and maybe have the fallback in case people have problems, and they can restore the old behavior until eventually we get those fixed in Coral.
Yeah, but that's still only the Hive connector, right? Like what I'm saying is we potentially need to add that same kind of behavior for views that are defined in the Iceberg, Delta Lake, or Hoodie connectors. That's not the case either.
Oh yeah, we will need to implement that for those connectors. I mean, that's
Yeah, so Doug, that's kind of where that sits. But it kind of doesn't answer your question, right? Because we can only do what the Trino engine does. What the Spark engine does is kind of the Spark engine's problem, and there's various versions, and then they would have to do a similar thing. And I think the only option that they have is as well is the same library, like also use Coral. They would just have the reverse problems, right? So ultimately, it's up to you to define views that hope to like where you hope to work in both engine, and then also verify that, right? Because that's like it depends heavily on what how those views are defined, as Martin explained.
Well, I guess so let's say Spark they don't implement anything. I mean, they do it naively by just trying to read the view and run it. So as long as you create a view in Trino using syntax that is compatible with Spark syntax, and that you know that the functions you're using exist in Spark and they behave the same way, then you should be able to read them from Spark and run them.
Yeah, but that's a big if.
It's a big if, yeah. But I mean, that's how you need to manage it until they add support for translation.
And I don't know how Hive behaves in terms of allowing reading Iceberg views that are defined in different dialect. It might or might not do that. I don't know enough about Spark.
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. This is assuming that they are ignoring the engine flag and just reading the view and trying to execute it as it comes. So what are you running in? I mean, what are what's the behavior running into right now?
Oh, right now, so we run DBT. DBT creates a view in Trino, and then a coworker tried to read it in Spark and got an error. And
What kind of errors do they get on Spark?
what type of error?
Yeah. Is it like they don't understand the syntax, or they say, "Oh, it was created by Trino, so we cannot run it"?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact error, but I started looking into it, and that's when I discovered the Iceberg views and how Trino stores it in the Hive meta store in a comment, basically. That's like post presto something and then a base 64 string.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So, I mean, at a minimum, what we would need to do is write the view according to how Iceberg expects it, which we're not doing.
Yeah. So,
aren't we? I thought we had a PR that added that support and did that.
Yeah. I mean, but if like based on what Doug is saying, like it's trying to decode it from the like. So we used to store it. I'm trying to remember how we encode it. I think we just have like a property or something that has the view encoded or something like that. I forget the exact details, but if that's different from what Iceberg expects as part of the spec and therefore what Spark expects, then it won't work.
Yeah, I mean, so I've been thinking about this, and there's a new library, relatively new library called Substrate that's supposed to, one of its use cases is to like support views across different engines. Like they mentioned that as like their second use case. So I was thinking if like, when Trino would create an Iceberg view, if it would write its native, in the, I think it's called representations or anyways, there's different sections in the view where you can have different dialects of SQL. And so like Trino would write its dialect of SQL. And then I was thinking if Trino could convert its SQL into this Substrate and then write a Substrate version of the query there. And so like another engine could read it, and instead of reading the Trino version, it would be like read the Substrate version, but that assumes that everybody can read a Substrate version of SQL and process it. Which I think there's like, so I've been following some of the composable, composable databases, and there's now like different libraries that implement different pieces of a database, and you can start to compose them together to create something. And it just seems like to me that like Substrate's going to be like a popular layer, like that if you can talk Substrate, like you can talk to a bunch of different other engines. But that's not clear that I don't know if Trino would want to invest in that, but like that would be like one way to implement something that would run.
I think Substrate is I know it's one of those like you'll never get there type of things, because like all the semantics of what Trino supports are, I mean, at least based on what I saw some time ago, they are not covered by Substrate. Like you can't represent everything that Trino does in Substrate. Like it doesn't support all the types that Trino supports. It doesn't support all the operations Trino supports. And then the semantics of functions may be completely, like the function library from Trino may be completely different from what Substrate expects, or I don't know if they even define a library. Like for example, let's say a function for doing doing a regular expression match. Does Substrate define that, or does it leave it up to the engines?
Yeah,
if it leaves it up to the engines, then Trino can say, well, this is a filter that does a regular expression over this column, but then if other engines don't implement that exact function with that exact semantics, then it won't work. So that's why I'm saying it's like one of those you'll never get there because,
yeah, well, but this is a correctness issue, right? So you can you cannot expect that the same subset plan will yield the same results in Trino and other engine, right? You feel like.
Sorry, you could if you define this precise semantics of operation, right?
Yeah, but this is not part of the Substrate spec, right?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah.
Substrate suffers a similar problem to how Aero, like it's very good marketing and it's like talked up very much, but then it falls down on these things. And it's actually done by the same folks.
Yeah, but from the research perspective, it should be actually possible to convert the AR representation to Substrate, right?
Mm.
I mean, it would be possible in the same way you can convert from, you may or may not be able to convert from Trino to Spark syntax, for instance, using Coral. You can have something that tries to convert it to the semantics of Substrate, but that depends on how precise the semantics of Substrate are.
Unfortunately, there's no easy answer, Doug.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, the analogy here is like, let's say you write a Java program and you say, oh, I'm going to convert it to C. And I'm going to just syntactically change everything. I mean, the structure of the program is going to use, I know, instead of methods, it's going to use, in classes, it's going to use functions in C. But what about the standard library? Like you're going to be invoking all the Java, well, you have all the Java types, all the Java, the standard library. You can't just do a naive translation and say, well, if you call Java's, I know, local datetime class dot now, like you can't just say in C, oh, call now, because that may not exist, right? You need to know what the translation is, what the equivalent function to a function in Java is in C to be able to do that type of translation. So the same problem exists with converting Trino SQL to any other platform, including Substrate. And I don't know if Substrate defines those things, or is it just, if Substrate is just the representation of the structure of the IR, then it's not sufficient.
On the good side, there is still work going on in the Iceberg community around all that as well. Like I know that they're wanting to also add support for materialized views as well, which to some degree could be a bit simpler because then the data is actually there. But it's still the problem of refreshing and filling it would still be engine dependent and stuff. So yeah, well, this is gonna be continuously a problem going forward, I think, in this like multi-engine world.
Yeah, will it ever be possible? That's the question. A lot of yeah.
The safe bet is to create the view in Trino, use it in Trino. And I know that's a cop-out answer, but right, sorry. Is that enough of our discussion and enough knowledge?
Oh yeah, that's plenty. I'm new, so like just hearing, I appreciate these calls because it gives me an opportunity to learn and get the historical, why it is what it is and what are some of the other issues. I'm relatively new, and so this is great. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, but it's a great reminder that we need to look at adding this Coral support to the other connectors, because currently it's only in Hive, and that's kind of like getting less use nowadays, hopefully. So hopefully. All right, Robert, Christian, Eric, anything you want to chat about? Robert, you mentioned something about Pinot, I think, right?
I did. Sorry, was that somebody else wanted to go, or?
No, you go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Robert Zich, software engineer at Raft. Relatively new user and contributor to Trino. I've used it a bit at my previous job, but for folks who don't know on the call, at Raft, we are a defense tech company. Our major customer today is the US Air Force, and we have a data platform that uses Trino. We also use Pinot. And for security purposes, we have to enforce policies. My colleagues have given some talks at the Trino Summit about how we use OPA for those things. What I'm looking to do is, because we use Pinot, we want to get the most performance out of Pinot, and we use JSON data. We want to be able to leverage Pinot's JSON index, and Pinot's JSON functions, to get really like low latency queries. Unfortunately, like the Trino Pinot connector today doesn't have support for predicate pushdowns in the cases where like a JSON column or data type is used. And I've been talking to Mateusz and Elon about doing this. Mateusz actually notified me about this call and suggested to let people know that I'm open to collaborating on it. Mateusz and I talked about some of the implementation details. Unfortunately, Elon, who is the kind of like the core or long-term maintainer of this connector, is busy. But I did get some insights from Mateusz that allow me to make some progress on it. Essentially, in the Trino Pinot connector, there are basically two kind of modes in which it communicates with Pinot. One of which is over HTTP, aka broker queries for dynamic tables, and the second is directly to Pinot servers over gRPC. Does not use the JDBC client, but basically the predicate pushdown that I'm working on will leverage that first method of communication to the brokers via HTTP. And so what we've kind of discussed as kind of like an early prototype of this functionality is to start with only like some simple use cases that we really need at Raptor that we're using for our for our predicates, namely like checking if a particular value out of a JSON is within a list of like an array type. The tricky part is that in order to kind of convert the SQL like that a Trino user would use to the equivalent JSON match call in Pinot to take advantage of the JSON index, it requires changing the JSON path expression from one form like to another. That is still part of the JSON path specification, if I understand correctly. Like for example, if you have like a simple selector for checking, whether or not a particular value is within an array, like in the like equivalent call to Pinot, you would say, JSON match, your JSON column, your key in the set of values in your JSON path, right? So, and then there's another case where the selector would have to be like changed to introduce like a wildcard expression to see if a particular given value by the user is within a list in the JSON
question.
index
which functions are you trying to push down? Because in Trino there's basically two
families of functions.
What's that?
2 families of functions. One is
there's 2 families. There's the legacy one and the newest one based on what the spec defines. So you have
one is I'm not sure which family it is, but like my predicate looks like where contains array, and then the second parameter is like a JSON extract key. So I want to see if the key, right, the value of that key is within the array.
That's your predicate in Trino.
Correct. And then on the Pinot side, that needs to be matched to like a JSON call to JSON match.
Right, but the contains function doesn't support JSON paths, so.
But the JSON extract scalar does.
Right, that's what I was getting to, the 2 families of functions. There's JSON extract, and Manfred, maybe go to.
These are the old ones, and then the newer ones.
The old ones are JSON. Yeah, the ones at the bottom. Yeah, go to the bottom first. Let's look at the old ones first. So you have JSON extract scalar, JSON, array contains, and those are the old ones that we added like ages ago, and they're somewhat limited. Then the SQL spec defined a whole new extension to deal with JSON, and it's a little more sophisticated. And you have functions like JSON query, JSON exists,
JSON value and array.
Well, some of those are constructors. Some of those are extracting things out of. So JSON object, JSON array, and JSON. Those are constructors, and then JSON query, JSON exists, and I think JSON value are for So JSON value.
The other one I was looking to use was JSON array contains. Are both of those the JSON extract scalar, JSON array contains, and JSON extract? are those all like legacy?
Those are the legacy ones. I mean, they work, and we don't have any plans to remove them in the foreseeable future because they're used everywhere, but they're limited. Like, for example, the JSON path language is much more limited. It doesn't support, I think, wildcards. Like, you can do, what is the flattening of nested structures and so on. The one in JSON value and JSON query is a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah, and the grammar for the JSON path is described in the spec. So
right.
Yeah, but I'm not really sure whether the parsing of the JSON path is extracted to a single place in our code. Is it something that we can expose to the connector?
I mean, yeah, not in the near future. Yeah, that's more we don't have an IR for that, so we can't. There's no way to structurally provide it to the connector. So connector, we need to parse it on its own.
But this JSON value, those are like part of the SQL spec. So theoretically, if Pinot also implements the same spec, could you blindly pass it through and get pushed on that way?
Well, sort of, because this is a syntactic structure in the spec. You see how it has JSON value, and you put an input, and you have keywords like format JSON, encoding, blah, and then passing, returning. So those control the behavior of what happens when there are errors. Do you return, do you fail, etc. So under the covers, we map them to functions, and these are Trino functions. So we would need the connector to understand how those internal functions work, the semantics of those functions, and then underneath, when it sees an invocation that says, is the internal JSON value function with this input and this path and these parameters for controlling the behavior, then you would need to generate the equivalent thing in the underlying database, whether that be standard SQL or whatever custom functions they have. So it doesn't really matter whether they implement the standard SQL syntax. Aside from making it easier to deal with the paths, they don't have to process them on their own. If the path has the same semantics, they can just pass it through.
So for Robert's problem, then there is not really a way to get towards that easily.
Not easily. Like, this is all work. It's a bunch of work. Yeah, regardless of whether you do the new functions or the old functions, it's going to be like you need to understand or interpret the path and translate it into whatever semantics the underlying database supports.
When I was discussing this with Robert, we came to the conclusion that if you narrow the scope of the shapes of the path that you support, because like when you're doing the connector expression pushdown, you don't need to like support everything, right? You can start from the basic basic shapes and try to push them down. So in these examples, these shapes are really simple, something that we can start with that. We don't need to support the full path spec basically.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's the same. It's analogous to the approach of a connector doesn't necessarily support pushdown of every single construct in SQL. It does only a subset it understands.
Yeah, or pushdown for a function with only specific data types and not all data types and stuff like that.
So this JSON extracts color, for example, with the simple path .key. It should be pretty straightforward pushdown. The same for the JSON mesh, I guess. With the asterisk.
Right.
Yeah, so I think Martin, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you implement something like that, it would be fine to merge that. We just have to make sure we document that it's limited and people know anyway that Pushdown is not the magic bullet, and like they need to essentially look in the analyzer plan.
Yeah, that's fine. I would say I guess the only thing that's a bit unfortunate is that we are trying to push users to use more of the new family of functions than the old one. So if this is only supported for the old family, then people are using the new ones. Maybe, I mean, it's easy to get confused. It's like, oh, I do JSON query and it runs slow. And if I do JSON extract, it runs fast, and I don't know why. And, you know,
Martin, are you saying that instead of using like JSON extract
if possible,
scalar,
I would say we should try to do it for the new generation of
for the JSON, this just JSON value function? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with it, but could I use it in a similar fashion in the way that I've put here in the chat?
Oh, sorry, let me see. I didn't see the chat.
In the chat, I put a couple of examples with like the Trino SQL and then an arrow. And then on the right-hand side of the arrow is the Pinot SQL with how the JSON path would be transformed.
Okay. Yeah, give me a second. Let me see. So contains array, JSON extract scalar with a column.
It looks like the Pinot one is quite similar to the one. Nah, not really.
The translated version would be something like JSON value with the JSON column, and then the JSON path would be exactly that. It would have to say strict or lax or something, and then the path. Yeah, that should work. The thing is, it might even be possible to just do an invocation with JSON query that gives you what you want. Oh no, but this is an array of a separate column. Okay, no. Okay, ignore that. Right. Oh, actually, hold on. So key in trying to understand the syntax in Pinot. So JSON match, you pass a column, and then the expression is the JSON path in array. What is array there? In that.
Oh, in the first example, array is like a list of values.
No, I know, but in the expression,
it's like in a
yeah. In the
this is like just it would be something like open paren and then a comma separated list of values.
Sorry, in this expression,
yes,
which is string really. So this is JSON path in, and what is array there? Is it a column or is it a like?
Yeah, like I'm saying, it's a list of values.
Oh, a list of values. Oh, it would be a constant that you would expand there.
Yes, a constant.
Oh, I see. It's not like you're referencing a column in the table. Okay, you would do that. Okay, I see. Because then they are not. I mean, the one you have in Trino is a bit more powerful because array could be coming from a column dynamically. In the second one, in the JSON match version, that has to be hard coded in the expression, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Like you can't just leave array there as a word. Oh, actually, how would you translate that? For example, let's say you have a table that has so sorry, let me back up a moment. Do you expect the usage in Trino to have a constant array in that position?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
It's expected to be a very small list that is fairly static and not pulling from like another column.
Right. Yeah, there might
we know, like in our use case, we know what that array is up front. I mean, we we can generate what that list is. It's a small list on the fly. It's dynamic in our cases, but it's a small. Yeah, it's not like pulling from another column. It's determined by other code.
So let me, I can check it after we're done with the call, but I think it might be possible to do the contains and everything in a single call in Trino without having a contains array JSON extract. I think you can do JSON query, and you can have filters that match values in a constant array, and it will give you a result. So I mean, you still have to do the push down, but I think the construct will be even simpler than what you have here.
Using the JSON value function.
I think JSON query.
JSON query.
Yeah, I need to look at the capabilities again. It's pretty sophisticated, so it may be possible to do exactly that contains check and all within a JSON path expression.
Also, if you want to dig into that more, there's a lot of unit tests for that to like look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess using the more powerful functions that are more expressive, right, may make it more difficult to follow the approach that Mateu's suggestion was, which was like, only try to do push down in very like specific cases that I need, right? Like if I'm using the legacy functions with like contains and JSON extract, right, that is a very kind of specific pattern that I can match in the connector. Whereas if I use JSON query, right, I wonder if I'd still be able to only like do a subset of the pushdown.
Yeah, let me
maybe I'd have to maybe inspect the JSON path more closely.
Yeah, let me look into that, because it may or may not be possible to in a single invocation. And yeah, then we can figure out is it easy or not to inspect and match. But all I'm saying is that it might be more natural to do the single invocation than what you have here. So like for from a Trino capability perspective, this might be more convoluted than what you would normally do if you were using JSON query. Which, I mean, it solves doing this, matching this pattern and doing the pushdown solves the problem, but it may not solve the problem for the way people would naturally do it using the SQL features. So.
But either approach is fine for like, I mean, you can solve your problem first and then see the next steps.
I understand. Yeah. If using JSON query or JSON value is doable, that would be the preferred push down. Although if it becomes too complex, then it's also okay to use the legacy functions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take a look into those newer functions. And I'm available on the Trino Slack or.
One thing that I'm not aware of that might be helpful, pushdown is generally a topic where the coverage is randomly sprinkled across all sorts of connectors. I have no idea if there is a JSON-related pushdown that exists in some other connector. If it does, it might be helpful to look at that, but I don't know if it exists anywhere. The biggest chance that something exists is probably OpenSearch and Elasticsearch connectors, but I'm not aware. Do you know maybe, Martin?
No, we don't do. And if I recall, then we don't do pushdown of those functions.
Okay. Yeah.
The only thing I found that was somewhat similar was like regex in Elastic.
Okay. Right. Regex we do. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, the one concern is how much infrastructure we need to build to this type of very pointed push down into Pinot for the different approaches, because like, so we can go and implement this for JSON extract with contains, but if that's gonna be a bunch of complexity that doesn't leverage for other things, then something we have to be aware of. Like, let's say we later want to push down something else and of the more complex JSON functions, and how much is gonna be like an if this else, like it's gonna be like a very complicated flow and a bunch of edge cases to deal with. That it makes the code harder to maintain. That's all. So we have to just be on the lookout for that.
Yeah, and if that's the case, and we find like a better approach at some point, maybe we can just like rewrite it once we find a cleaner way of doing it.
Right.
But yeah, I'm looking to try to get something to support in within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay, awesome.
So
that's great.
I'll hopefully open up a PR.
Excellent.
And ask for your review sometime soon.
Cool.
Okay. Sounds good.
We're pretty much at time. Eric, did you have anything you needed to actually discuss or wanted to mention? I saw that Christian mentioned that the group provider plugin has found someone else to bring that to fruit, like over the finish line. So that's great.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Mateus a question. If we're working on an open API spec for Trino, is it valuable to contribute it back, or does anybody care about something like that?
A what?
Open API, so it kind of documents the Trino
Open
protocol.
API.
Yeah. There was an issue that was put on GitHub a while ago, but nobody ponied up to it. The reason for those is if you have things that sit in front of Trino, not the gateway, but something that sits in front of that, then those specs are very nice, because then you can enforce protocol changes and standards. So there's a lot of value to having it. It's just a different standard and a different way of documenting specs. I slacked Mateus an example.
Are you talking about the client protocol or?
Yes, the client protocol. Yeah.
I think that we can document it using OpenAPI. It would be useful for other clients if we decide to implement support for Trino in other languages. Right now, you need to like combine the knowledge from different sources, like from the wiki page, from the source code, from other libraries. So maybe keeping this in a single place would be useful.
Okay, I gave that example here I'm working on. I just checked it in and pushed it, just so you can kind of have something to look at. Sometimes it's easier to look at something than talk about it. But this is a document, the protocol, the spec, the responses, stuff.
Yeah, but it doesn't document the semantics of the protocol, right? That you need, for example, follow the next URI, just describe the endpoints and what they accept and what they produce, right?
Well, it can do the next URIs too. I just haven't put all those pieces in. I had to put a sniffer on it to try and look at the protocols, because their documentation is not quite there. But I also know that you're working on version 2, and you're probably going to kill what the hell the specs look like.
It's not version 2.
Is it version 10?
It's version 1 point something.
1.2.
Oh, okay.
1.2.
Right. 1 point broke the spec. I get it. All right, that's fine.
Basically, the most of the things are the same in the split protocol. So
Me and Mateus are working on the PR to get that updated. I've started, but we have to sync up on that still.
yeah, most of the changes are already in master. So
you can
just needs documentation. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was going to add the next URI too, and authentication failure. I have to document a lot of stuff.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah, no, it would be useful to have.
Okay, I'm just curious. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, there weren't many of us, but we still had a full session, so that's awesome. Again, as usual, thank you for jumping in, and we'll see you in a month's time, and bring those Trino Summit proposals.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
See you next time. Bye.
See you next time.